Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the CDS. It might sound a little bit different. My uni has off like recording booths, right? They come with like a big, like microphone controlling pad that I've seen in like music classes, and it's got this big microphone that looks really large, and I can even increase the size of the desk. I've just noticed. Because the person I live with is sick and I don't want to record while I'm at home. That seems unfair to them. But it took me like 40 minutes to organize this. It also took me 40 minutes to find the place. I went to the librarian and I was like, hey, um, where's the room? And it says G something. And so I thought it was on the ground floor, but she's like, oh, it's on floor 1. And so I go to floor 1 and I walk around and I do like the Pulp Fiction thing where the individual doesn't look like they know where they're going. And then I spent 40 minutes trying to set this thing up. I finally got it, but I'm only allowed to record this for 2 hours a day. So I can't record as much as I wanted. But let's go over the CDS stuff and hopefully it'll be enjoyable. I'm going to stop recording just for a second and just make sure that this is all working for like the 10th time and that the audio isn't too bad. So give me a second and then we'll go into the CDS stuff. Okay, I've just double checked the audio settings. It's very directional, this microphone, so I've got to make sure like my mouth is facing like the proper direction. I also don't know how good the soundproofing is. Now I'm in a library, right? Like I don't want to annoy the individuals around me who are trying to, read. But I'm hoping it's super soundproofed, so I'm going to talk at this volume and hopefully it's fine. But after 2 minutes of not talking about Spidz versus Aikado, let's talk about Spidz versus Aikado. So, Yap Krok, who is Aikado's team, has got Katarina, Annie, Timo, Leona, Seraphine, Gangplank, Vi, Karma, Nami, Maokai. And I've obviously got, and this is going to surprise the hell out of you, Gwen, Na, Pantheon, Varus, Alawi, Fiora, Darius, Thresh, Shannon, Tarek. By the way, these little texts at the bottom, they're outdated. They're from like previous things. I can't be bothered updating them. So like Aikado is no longer on Tutagon. He traded Aphelios Aphelios, Yasuo, and Poppy for Seraphine, no, for like Vi and Timo and something else, Maokai. Anyway, from Aikado, I expected Karma Vi and then 2 broad main decks. So they brought Karma Vi, and when I say Karma Vi, think high Karma set, right, like the meta deck. The last 2 weeks, right, since he's had access to Vi. Aikado really likes broad main as well, and it does really well. All of these decks do quite well into like mid-range nonsense, right? Like generally speaking, the way that these decks play out, they're able to beat the mid-range stuff. However, they've got many, many options, right? It's not just these, and their options are like good into my decks in general. Like they have got, I think, the most, just by the champions and like the archetypes, like the most anti-Spidzian lineup there is. Other options I could have seen were like Leona stuff, which I didn't write in the top thing, or like aggro stuff, because he has brought aggro quite a bit. He's brought like Katarina, Gangplank Pirates, or any Gangplank Pirates, and then Katarina, Timo aggro, something like that. That's pretty likely within his wheelhouse. But the other option I could have also seen was Shellfolk, which he brought the previous week. So he brought Shellfolk one of those weeks, and he's a big fan of Shellfolk. I know that much about Aikado. But expecting Kamavai, the 3 decks I brought can kind of sometimes maybe be okay into them, sometimes kind of maybe. These decks are Alawi Fiora, Pantheon Varus, and like Mononoxus aggro. Aikado is quite hard to prep for. Now, they have the most anti-Spidz champions, all anti-mid-range control. I think this week into Vacuum is the scariest one. I've talked about like some of the previous weeks being quite scary. Like the first 2 weeks were quite scary because I hadn't had any experience in this format. Obviously, I've understood a little bit more about the kind of things I'm trying to go for within the CDS nowadays. But the first 2 weeks were quite scary, and then Mafrigi was quite scary because she was rank 1. I think this week, in a vacuum, absent of the player, absent of my experience level, this one should have been the scariest. But I also know that he felt very similarly fearful into my lineup. For I change every week. I don't watch too much Twitch, but sometimes when like cool events are going on, like the Aegis stuff or the seasonals, I will, if there's like key moments, I want to see like what Aikado's reaction is to those moments. And so sometimes I'll boot him up, and then so I'm watching him for about 5 minutes, and then sometimes he'll bring up the CDS. So I also like watch his CDS stuff in preparation to like my games like last week, if that makes sense. So I think like his game was like an hour before my game or something, and so as something to do, I wanted to see what was happening in the CDS, and so I was watching twitch.tv. Anyway, this is Karma Vi that Aikado brings. This is the sort of version now that he's able to run in all the Eternal cards. He can run stuff like Get Excited and, Fallen Feline. And this is the way he's built Karma Vi. His win condition has gone from like basically just like set control to Get Excited and Mystics, which is, it makes sense, right? Like now it's definitely trying to do like a burn win con. And this is generally what he was bringing every single week. I don't think like this looks a lot like set karma, and I hope you'll see how that sort of like connection quite matters for the stuff we're bringing. So the first deck is Alawi J4 in quotes. If you've been preparing at all for the Open, you'll know that Alawi J4 was one of the main decks people were bringing to try and beat Karma set. So for me to bring Alawi J4, aka like Alawi Fiora, it made a lot of sense for me to do that in order to try and get into the Karma set stuff, right? So I'm on my 3 Cataclysms. I've also got all the other stuff that you sort of want, like the Buru Lookouts. 3 Buru Lookouts are super important in this matchup. The way you beat both Broadmane and Karma with like tentacles is to have all of your tentacles hit a certain thresh point that thresh point sounds like a SI champion. A certain thresh point that they need to deal with it once it becomes like a 6/6 or something, and then you summon a new one that becomes a 6/6. So you want to do this like 3 times. You don't want to go to like 12/12 immediately because that's an easy like tag out target. So what you want to do is you want to get it to just enough that they need to deal with it, but not be overcommittal such that you're wasting your resources. And what Buru Lookout does really well is to know 3/3 into a 6/6, but still develop like your 4/3 that the lookout is. Or it summons a new one, right, and gives it 3/3. And I think both of these are seeing Buru Lookout as just like sizable Mirai Warden. Like Mirai Warden that doesn't die to Cataclysm is genuinely just like good enough in a deck like this. And because it buffs your Alawi stuff, right? If you're combining it with Alawi or combining it with the Sea's Voice, like it becomes something they need to deal with. So the 3 Buru Lookout, which isn't common, most decks only run like 1. When they think of Buru Lookout, if at all, like Buru Lookout is a very weird looking card in a lot of these decks, but I think Buru Lookout makes a lot of sense in the way that this deck was trying to go for. I'm on 2 form up over 1 sharp sight. Now, Aikado does have Teemo, right? So I have that sharp sight there for Teemo because the only ways I can deal with Teemo are Cataclysm single and sharp sight. But there was one game where I was playing against Jansport and I had a 12/12 tentacle, so I had a 10/10 tentacle, so I played Nakakibaras. He recalled it, obviously, so that way I can't do the focus speed spell. So I replayed the tentacle, right? Because I had 9 mana. But he was at 12 HP. If I want to kill him with a Nakakibaras thing, he also only had 1 blocker. I needed to do form up on Nakakib on the tentacle so that they would become 3/3, so that it would be 12 worth of tentacles attacking. But I only had sharp sight, so it only did 8 damage, and I lost. That was a very minor situation, but like the stats that this thing gives is important, and more important than the chances of them having Teemo was my instinct. Blocking things like Augmented Clockling doesn't really matter as much. The way my decks are trying to win are going over the top of Augmented Clockling, and so I think it is more valuable to have like +1 strength for like an open attack than it is to block something like a Teemo or an Augmented Clockling. But that was the logic for this deck. This is what is supposed to be Karma set. I don't think this is too surprising. This is like the main deck that's supposed to be Karma set. We've got a few cards that obviously are in Eternal, such as I think Relentless Pursuit was rotated, but that's basically it. This deck was like entirely built to beat Karma set. Second is Pantheon Varus. Pantheon Varus is going to look a little weird because like Karma set is supposed to beat certain types of mid-range, but is like a little bit scared of like the Cataclysm stuff just because it can go through the stuns and things. So you might see Pantheon Varus and think this is actually a deck that's going to be defeated by Karma set. And this is the sort of stuff that I think Aikado would want to see if he brought Karma set. The way this works is sort of really interesting, and I want to like dive more deeper into why like the Karma Vi matchup is super, super weird because they don't have set. So Pantheon Varus does really well into Karma Vi, even post Karma, because Karma Vi doesn't have a win condition, unlike Karma Set, and because Karma Set can destroy stuff, it's a lot stronger. So the main question I want to ask is, how do you kill Pantheon? You can try and Hexobliterate a Pantheon, but Pantheon will have enough health by the time like Hexobliterator is going to be targeting Pantheon. And you can, even post-Karma, play Expansive Protection and protect Pantheon from Hexobliterator. And they're only running 2 copies, right? How do they kill Varus? Again, it's Hexobliterator. You can sort of attempt to get excited when Karma's flipped the Varus, but that's also like your win condition. Like, get excited Mystic Shot's how you're trying to win. The fact that there's no set means you're actually not able to kill Pantheon and Varus, and very typically when I was doing this matchup, I would just have Pantheon Shield Vault just like staying in hand, not doing anything, even into turn 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, because genuinely speaking, at some point I ran them out of resources. That's the way the Pantheon Varus deck typically played. Obviously, I would prefer to win before turn 10. After turn 10, it becomes a lot harder once they have their Karma. But genuinely speaking, I attack every 2 turns. What are they going to do after like 10 attacks? The best thing they can do is generate stuff from Karma. So generate extra concussives and extra things. And if they get everything lining up. They need to have like 4 or 5 burn spells to allow Fallen Feline and Mystic and get excited to hit me for the Nexus. And Vi can kill Pantheon and Varus, but I will have just as many Pantheons and Varuses as they have. In the event that they've got Karma, I actually still often beat them, weirdly enough. And in the event that they don't have Karma, like this is a very like easy win matchup, right? Like Heratzi is super important. If they don't have Karma, they need to put 2 resources into Heratzi, or if I end up attacking with Heratzi, they need to somehow put 4 resources into Heratzi all of a sudden. So this felt like really, really, really good. We've got a few cards here specifically for this matchup to make it even better. We've got Hush to like open Hush Karma in certain like lethal scenarios. It becomes a lot better. Like if we've got a Heratzi on the field, they can just tank out Heratzi and Heratzi's gone. But if we pre-commit Hush, then they have to commit 2 things. And we're sort of just like outvaluing them in that sense. Mikhail's is there also to beat like slow speed stuns. So if I have a Heratzi in the field and I develop like a Varus and I don't want it to be stunned anymore, I can play Mikhail's and that would also sort of scare them out. We took out the revive spell because I didn't want anything to be denied, and I took out one of the unforgiving colds because the only target that unforgiving cold really has is Vi. One of the ways they can win the game, because as I was saying, like they actually struggled to win the game. So one of the few ways they do win the game is second Vi plus Karma on Cluckling, which means they need 2 Vi's, a Karma, and a Cluckling. Now that did kill me like 2 or 3 times, but I'm mostly highlighting that to show how difficult it is for them to actually beat Pantheon Varus. I've got the Wounded White Flame there to have another like mid-range Saga Seeker basically. It's not the best card, but I wanted more copies of Saga Seeker to try and pressure them in the early game so that they're forced to use their draws and their stuns early so that they don't use it after Karma. But again, I did this matchup like 10, 15 times, and genuinely speaking, when I was fighting like lmoa and sometimes Janspot, I would just keep attacking with Pantheon and Varus into the later turns, and they would have Karma, and they would do Karma plus place your bets, and they would do Karma plus formula. And they would keep recalling and keep stunning, but they can't really attack me, especially if Pantheon has lifesteal. They can't really attack me, and they can't trade into these units. And so I just end up overwhelming them. Eventually, I run them out of resources. That sounds crazy, but it doesn't have set, right? Set does obliterate these things. Set does make this hard. But Vi isn't set. Vi has to kill herself in order to remove one of these, and I will have more. Most games I had Pantheon Shield Vault, and I would end up being forced to play it, or at least heavily considering playing it, because they couldn't kill my units. So that's why you're at Pantheon Varus. Next is Mono Noxus. Mono Noxus was a really weird deck, but I ended up bringing it, and I want to. It's a bit of a storyline regarding Mono Noxus, but this is the final version of the deck that had like 4 or 5 iterations, but the final version was Mono Noxus, and this sort of made sense in terms of like Reckless Trifarian and Iron Ballista being really good into Karma set. So they can't trade into Reckless Trifarian. If we look at their deck, none of their units are really good into Reckless Trifarian. They can do like Mixo plus Mystic, or Fallen Feline plus Mystic, but that's 2 cards, right? With Iron Ballista, they can trade into it with Mixo or Pit Professional, but that's fine. Pit Professional is one of their best units into my deck. Or like they need Pit Professional, and they need a lot of Pit Professionals to feel okay. And Basilisk Rider is just beautiful, right? They need Mixo plus High Note, Mixo or Pit Professional plus High Note, and it still does overwhelm damage. Like I really liked the way that this deck ended up feeling into their deck. Before that though, we had Phase. This was Fey Aid, and it was Nardarius, and it felt alright. This deck actually felt pretty good. Now this deck had a lot of iterations. There was versions with Heroic Refrain, there were versions with Junk Construct, there were versions with like a bunch of other Fey units, right? Like there are so many Feys that all cost 2 mana in this game. And there were lots of games where I had like 4-5-3 or 4-5-4 Feys, like Owlcats, right? And it would attack them, but the issue was that it traded into Pit Professional, and then I got stalled out, right? That's the issue with how this deck ended up playing out. If they played Fallen Feline plus Pit Professional, I was losing. While if they do Fallen Feline plus Pit Professional into this deck, it's not great for me, but it's so much better for me in the long term, right? There were versions of this deck with, Decimate and Noxian Fervor, but what ended up happening was the cards I was removing were all the Bandle City cards, and the cards I was adding were all the Noxus cards. So this was another version of the deck that was halfway between what I brought to the tournament, which was the Mono Noxus, and the Fey deck, right? I cut out a lot of the stuff. Conchologist was in this deck for a long time before I cut it out. And what kept happening was that I kept removing cards like Loping Telescope or Assistant Librarian or Bandle Commando or Beard, because they weren't as good. And as soon as I saw this, I was like, why aren't I just like all in on the Noxus? right? Why am I still in Bandle City? Especially because Gwen is much better than Nah, right? Nah, being a 4-mana 3/3 isn't good enough. It trades into Mixo. They can't necessarily block Mixo because of like Pokestick, but Nah only has Overwhelm on turn 6, and if it's on turn 5, I have to pre-commit like a Pokestick, while Gwen doesn't trade into anything. Like, even if they've got Mixo, like, they need to pre-commit another spell, and it does 2 burn, right? Like, Gwen is so much more valuable in that sort of sense. I also didn't bring Harrowing because obviously my deck I was trying to beat was this one, and I knew they were going to be on Denies. It's hard not to be on Deny in that deck. So that was the idea of Mono Noxus, but you can see, like, this is what we started with. I really like Fey Aid. I wanted Fey Aid to be good. It just didn't end up panning out. I tried a long time to make Fey Aid work, like a good few hours, and then it transformed into this, and then it transformed into Mono Noxus. That's all. That's all I wanted to say. If you haven't seen Aikado's VOD, I recommend watching it. It's very interesting to see his perspective on this game because it's a really interesting game. Please remember to watch the CDS recaps. They're pretty good. There will be Aegis stuff and Runeterra and Open stuff sometime later this week, with probably this microphone stuff. I hope it sounds fine. I'm a little bit concerned. I also am concerned I'm being a bit too loud. I hope the people around me, I hope this is soundproofed properly. There's 1 round left, and after the VOD review, I'm going to do some maths regarding who makes it in, based on that 1 round left. But that'll happen after, because I don't want to spoil on what happens in this game, obviously. And then just, like, enjoy the montage. Bye. they not have karma? Holy shit. Good morning. I hope you enjoyed the montage. I've got about 80 minutes to record this, and it's about a 50-minute gameplay thing. So let's go through this like super quickly in this matchup. That last game took a long time. Oh, that's right. At the start, I misdo this stuff. So worry yourself not. Yeah, at the start we've got Alawi Fiora versus Annie Katerina Seraphine. I've had to run here, and I can't book it for very long, so hopefully we can do this within the 80 minutes. This is our starting hand against Annie Katerina Seraphine. Now, their deck runs a bunch of, like, PNZ Noxus removal is a pretty, like, common, thing to be finding in the world. And so I don't want any of these. Like, Answered Prayer is decent. It's a 2-mana 2/2, which isn't, like, bad against this sort of deck. Like, it gets Mystic Shot, but, like, they're going to have Mystic Shot. You've got to run them out of resources. And Fiora isn't bad, but like you really want your Watchful Idols, your Allowies, your Seize Voices, I think, in this matchup. And Eye is fine, but all of these things are things you're like okay drawing into. But what you really want on turns 1, 2, 3, 4 are your regular spawn units, right? So I didn't really want any of these, and I think I cut them all. Yeah, so I'm confused about Answered Prayer, but I end up kicking it, and then we get Broadwing, Cataclysm, Tentacle Smash. And Broadwing is pretty good. Like, it's a 2-mana 3/3, and if they Mystic it, it's a 2-mana 1/1, but that means they Mysticked it, right? And that's sort of like the point of Broadwing, basically. Tentacle Smash isn't bad. You see me kill Annie with it, but that's a bit of a debatable choice.
This is alright, I guess, but I don't know. Like, this matchup should be 1. I think they should win this matchup every time.
We get Sharp Sight, and they play Annie.
I'm gonna do Broadwing sitting with Tentacle Smash, I think. I could just Tentacle Smash, but Broadwing does push more damage. Unless they've got Spidz.
So we just play Broadwing, you know. Now, we could have done Tentacle Smash here to, like, immediately kill Annie. It means we avoid 2 damage on the Nexus, but I really wanted to push 3 damage as opposed to 2 damage. Like, I wasn't thinking this Annie was going to flip, right? Because we have the Tentacle Smash that will kill Annie at some point, unless we decide to kill something else with it, or we decide to challenge Annie or something. Generally speaking, I was expecting this to be the way that we were going to destroy Annie. And as such, I wanted to play the 0/3, get 3 damage in, try and hit them all up, because I will need to, like, aggro them quite badly, because they will outvalue me, like, quite a bit. Like, we can try, sort of, they can outvalue me, right? It's like, old Raven Bloom, like, Bilgewater Raven Bloom, right? Like, the point is that you can, like, outvalue them, and it's similar with the PNZ stuff, except not as much, and with Broadwing, not as much as well. But so there's some ways where you can outvalue them, right? There are some times in which you, like, they 2-for-1 themselves, and you eventually outvalue them. But with the way I was expecting this matchup to sort of go, I don't think that was a particularly, like, viable strategy. Like, I thought that a more viable strategy was to be able to, like, aggro them down, especially since they're on stuff like, you know, Formula and stuff now. Like, they have the more draw that they need in order to, like, be successful in those positions. And I didn't have a good way of dealing with Katarina, and Katarina draws herself when she strikes the Nexus. So I thought that, like, I'm going to have to go, like, faster than them, which is why I thought that I think I'm going to hit them for 3 and then Tentacle Smash them later.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, there's mistake.
So, like, we didn't have to Tinkle Slam there. We could have done Broadwing into something like an Allowy, into Allowy, because we had drawn Allowy. Like, I wanted tentacles on the field. It forces them to, like, interact with those tentacles. And while we could have done, like, Broadwing, Eye of God Allowy to give Allowy strength, I still wanted to attack with the tentacle, right? Like, I want to be pressuring them with the 3-4 damage that the tentacle will provide when it hits. I think 3 in both of these scenarios, because they both say spawn 2. So that's why I went with the Tentacle Smash. I wanted to, like, make sure Allowy could be developed and keep attacking them. Like, this was the most aggressive line I could have taken. Even though Broadwing, like, would have traded into this without using, like, your key piece of removal. The key piece of removal aspect doesn't matter too much. The only other thing that I really want to kill is, like, Katarina. And Broadmain is, like, much, much later. And Broadmain stuff is a completely different other, like, ilk of logic, right? Like, we can use Cataclysm and stuff. We can, you know, do other, like, I don't know. You could have kept this for something like Broadmain, but when you do this against Broadmain, they'll be able to interact with the tentacle, so then the tentacle will, like, inevitably become a 2/2 if you're trying to attack Broadmain with it. So I think it's just more likely to say, okay, we can never beat Broadmain. Like, if they stick a Broadmain and we're not really, like, killing them on that turn, we're probably just losing the game. And with that in mind, like, I think it's important to do Tentacle Smash here to try and aggro them to the point where they can't really afford Broadmain because it's too expensive and they need to, like, stay alive. That was my thinking, at least, with this card.
Yeah, but I could just, like, lose to, you know, disintegrate something. It's just such a weird position. I don't really like it.
I also couldn't talk very loud when I was recording this. Like, the person I live with was still sick during that time, so I didn't want to, like, disturb them too much.
I'll play Allowy. They're gonna have to, you know, hit her with Dissin, I guess. Like, this isn't great. We could do Eye of God. Like, we could do Broadwing, Eye of God.
I spent a lot of time thinking about this. My concern is that they'll kill Allowy.
I don't think this is the best play. I'm sure we could take this a bit slower.
So we've got two options. We can take this, like, much, much quicker. Play Allowy, either force removal out of them or deal, like, 1 billion damage. Alternatively, like, because Allowy's only pushing 5 overwhelm damage, like, if they don't have Disin plus a ping, that doesn't matter because they can pretty, like, justifiably Disin plus block And that way I'm not like actually removing that many resources out of them, which is the reason like not to play Alawi, right? Because you want to run them out of resources, which is what I mean by taking it slower, right? So there were options where I play Eye of God, which is something that they can't remove. I keep drawing Eye of God when they interact with it, so they end up 2 for zeroing themselves in that sort of instance. And I could have done like Broadwing. There were other alternatives. I could have even done like Ivan Gigaboros and try and go wide. But my thinking, one was that this is a matchup I've never done before, and in matchups you've never done before, it's pretty safe to do something just like be aggressive, I think, which is like part of the reason for Alawi. And I think like even more broadly, they need to answer Alawi eventually. Like they need to find these answers. And if we can punish their hand like super early, like if they've only got 10 turns or 10 draws or whatever, like by turn 6 they'll only have 10 draws. They've got 10 draws to answer Alawi and like other things that'll be developing over the next 2 turns. Is much more of a like make them have this stuff, then keep it going for like another 10 turns after that, and maybe like find interesting scenarios, but you know, maybe that like a player that's done more of this matchup might find that more like able. But with a matchup that I've never done before, I just thought play Alawi, be aggressive. If they interact with Alawi, I understand they could do, you know, and what they end up doing is like caustic dis in. But for now, I think this is like a good strategy of just being aggressive, making them deal with my stuff. And like something like a caustic distance does let me like outvalue them, just not with Alawi type of outvaluing, but like withdrawal type of outvaluing, right?
But I also need to like play around my best hands. Right. Yeah. I think I'm attacking the Tentacle. Like, I'd rather trade it into this, I think. Okay.
I thought that was really funny that I offered the attack. And take it. For a bit of logic into their hand, I think this is their first of 3 Katarinas they draw in a row or something like that. And I'm not sure what to do in this position, because I can't do, like, Cataclysm. I have to just admit that I can't kill Katarina. Like, I don't have a method. I can do something like a Broadwing Sharpsight, but that runs into, like, a lot of stuff, like a Mystic on the stack, a Dissin on the stack. And, like, that doesn't trade into Katarina, right? It just, like, blocks her. Because I don't have a way to actually kill the Katarina, because when she strikes, she's got quick attack, she'll return to hand, right? I can try and do something like a Cataclysm, and then do a Sharpsight, but again, if they've got something like the Mystic Shot, this is, like, putting all my resources, including a main resource, which is in, like, Cataclysm, in the pit. So I couldn't deal with that. I just thought, okay, we'll let them have Katarina and try and like be bigger than them. But it was a really awkward position, right? Like that Katarina does put me in like really weird spots where maybe it is correct to Cataclysm her, and like, you know, do the Sharpsight and force them not to have Katarina and like try and outvalue them in that sense. But I thought that it's better off for me to try and draw and set up another like tentacle and try and beat them down.
I could have saved like Tentacle Slam for her, maybe, possibly.
So we could have saved Tentacle Slam for her. And killed Annie via other means, which I don't think is an awful option, right? Like we could have, you know, played Broadwing or done other stuff, attacked Annie on turn 4. If they had something like a Mystic, then what would happen is I'd end up playing a Sharpsight, right, to counter that Mystic shot, and maybe Annie would survive. But once Annie gets to like turn 4 or 5, like they can flip her on command at those sort of positions very typically, right? Because Annie would have struck twice, that's 2. They did Sentry Flock, that's 2 more. They only need 2 more after that. And if they want to, like my interacting with Annie would force them to interact with my thing to keep the Annie alive. And then just so happens, Annie's flipped. And by the point Annie's flipped, like, you know, I can't do too much because Tibbers is a big unit and stuns me. So I have to open attack every time, which doesn't feel amazing. And I didn't want Annie to flip, right? So that's why I did that way, but you could see worlds where people would want to keep Tentacle Smash for Katarina here, but I'm not entirely sure that that's the right option.
I think Cataclysm and Force it. That's going to be really bad.
Spend a lot of time thinking here.
Like, this is not great. My plan, I guess, is to outvalue them, right? Is it really Cataclysm Sharpsight? I guess not. Like, I guess the play would be something else.
And I end up passing.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah. The Broadway. But Black is like a ball. It's just bad. It sucks. Put Eye of God on Broadway. It's kind of cute. Like, we can do Eye of God into Eye of Not Before, maybe, or something. Brewer looked at is cute until they played Broadway. I sort of don't answer the Broadway. If they Broadway, I'll say Broadway like the Broadway. I don't have an answer to Broadway, so I'll just deal with it.
Yeah, so I was pretty sure I didn't have an answer to Broadmain. If they stick a Broadmain, I don't think I can win this matchup. I think that's like Broadmain instantly wins it for them. Like they play Broadmean, I can't kill Broadmean, I attack, they block with like the Sentry, and then like what am I doing for the rest of my life? So I just said, okay, they don't have Broadmean, I'll develop, and that way I'm developing a 4/3, which is something that's not easy for them to deal with, right? And I'm also like increasing the size of the tentacle, which means they have to chomp block it or disintegrate it or whatever. So I thought this was like a pretty good play. I actually didn't expect them to play Hurricane Katrina. I thought they were going to either like pass or play Sentry or something. So them playing Hurricane Katrina gave me like a really interesting read onto their hand that their best play against my 3/3 challenger is Hurricane Katrina. Like I felt really good here that they felt forced to have Hurricane Katrina. I think their hand might be Hurricane Katrina, Piltover and Tailstones, and one other thing at the time. I think that might be what their hand is looking like.
They can like Mystic Katrina.
Yeah, so one of these spells is Death Lotus, at the very least. I've watched his VOD after playing him. Although at the time, I wasn't thinking about Death Lotus at all. I often forget about champion spells when seeing things on the stack. I never consider it, unless it's something like pretty famous, like Nautilus's thing. Right, so their hand is literally Katarina, Piltover and Tailstones at the moment. That is their hand. And so they can't do Death Lotus because Death Lotus will harm their own Katarina, so they can't keep Katarina alive with Death Lotus, which is why they were considering doing Death Lotus. And so they decided to do it this way. And this is 2 Disintegrates gone, which is really nice. Like on the graphic, I hope I said that I haven't finished the montage. I hope I said that like I've gotten rid of their Disintegrates, and their only way to deal with fast speed attacks is Disintegrate or like, 3 Mystic Shots or something. So them losing 2 Disintegrates here was really, really interesting for me. Obviously, it puts me back a lot in tempo, but in terms of like the way I'm allowed to pressure them in future, getting rid of 2 of their Disintegrates is really lucky for me, and they don't have an Annie on the field, so they can't get like Annie's Disintegrate, right? And like one of the reasons I liked Brew Lookout now, like rewatching this, is that it forced like the Disintegrate out. I don't think they would have done Disintegrate then had I not been pushing 6 damage with it, because the Watchful Idol's still on the field, right? So I think that Brewer Lookout was really, really good. And this is like the best LAOE top deck in the wild.
Oh my god, really?
I'm so surprised. Yeah, and this basically wins me the game, right? Like, I know he was very upset by this. But this is just like the lethals. I had a really good hand in the end. But they also like had a really awkward hand with the 3 Katarinas. So this was like mostly a hand thing that was able to let us win here. But I do think the Boru Lookout was like a super interesting play, and I'm glad I did it. And I think doing Tentacle Smash on the Annie was the right choice because Annie can definitely get out of hand quite quickly. But I also wanted the tentacles for the Alawi attack, right, on the 10. To force the out resources once more, right? Because I had to do Disintegrate then.
Yeah, exactly. They must have drawn really badly to not have Separate Carry for me.
Right, so they didn't have Broadmean, they didn't have Tibok, they didn't have... Like, Tibok wouldn't have procced, but this means, like, if they had Tibok, they would have played it, right? Because they need to, progress their own win condition. So they definitely were, like, not accessing things that I think they definitely would have wanted to access, but we did pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that.
Okay, now the deck I'm less confident on is Acquiescence.
Yeah, so this deck I'm less confident on. I'm just not, like, a big confident Acquiescence player. And I think this game I play quite badly. So I don't know if I'm supposed to keep Pantheons here. I thought that, like, I want to, like, out-Pantheon them and, like, out-resource grind them. But to do that, I need to, like, flip Pantheon and use Pantheon as, like, you need to 3-for-1 this man. And then I do, like, Expanses and Unforgiving Cold. Unforgiving Cold, I think, is really awful in this matchup. Like, you can hit Tibok and it can hit, like, Katarina slightly. But I need to, like, have things developed by that time. And Expanses is fine, but these are things I want to draw into. On my early turns, I want Saga Seeker and, like, the weapons, either weapon, like Weapon Shepherd or the other weapon. I'm gonna get Furious Wielder, and this hand looks really awkward.
That's good. I can pick Varus. What I like about Varus is it gets steps before second point, but I also need targets.
And because this is my first action, the timer hasn't, like, built up, right? Like, typically when you do a predict, like, your timer has built up a little, so you have that much time to think about it. But because it's turn 1, I don't have the timer built up, so I have to make this decision rather quickly on a deck that I'm not particularly confident in. So I thought Forsaken Bakai is pretty decent, right? Forsaken Bakai lets me search for things more, right? It gives me more scries to try and find, like, you know, the weapons, either Haratsi or Wandering Shepherd. I also wanted to find, like, you know, Wandering Shepherd himself. And Lunari Cultist does have a target, but the thing is, like, my next draw is going to be this thing. So I know what my hand is going to look like next turn, and none of these hands next turn still look that great, partly because my hand right now looks like really, really awkward and stilted. So I thought, like, at least a Varus gives me stats on my broccoli, and I'm able to attack, and then at least Varus procs all of these things, even if it's a little bit late. And what I was sort of banking on was that my turn 3 draw would be really, really nice. I could have done Forsaken Bakai, but then I wouldn't have Varus, right? So I could have my turn 3 draw be a little bit better, but then I'd be wondering, like, what my turn 4 draw is going to look like. Or I could have done Skip and had, like, a natural turn 2, turn 3 draw and tried to hopefully get something. My thinking was that Varus might put me in a better position to have, like, a really interesting mid-game, provided I draw, like, a good turn 3 thing. Whether that's Haratsi or Wandering Shepherd or even Lunari Cultist would be fine on turn 3, although I'd prefer not, right? But at least Varus, like, secures that I've got a really interesting mid-game. But that security is sort of contingent on having a good turn 3 blocker. So when I click Varus here, it looks really awkward. And I think it's really awkward. And Forsaken Bakai is probably, like, a safer play. But in my head, I was thinking, I'm willing to bet this game on having, like, a proper turn 3 draw. Because if I take Forsaken Bakai and I don't get stuff from Forsaken Bakai, I'm going to be in, like, a super awkward position. And if I take Lunari Cultist, I'm also, like, slowing the game, but not to, like, a fast enough rate for myself, right? Like, slowing the game benefits them. They've already got Tybok on the field, and their sort of deck sort of beats our deck if it goes too slow, right? So that was my logic for Varus. I think Varus or Pass was my instinct, and Forsaken Bakai might be the better choice, but it's not a choice I'm confident or comfortable in. But that's why I picked Varus, even though you're going to see the next, like, 10 draws, and you're going to say Varus is a stupid choice.
Like,
That was my logic.
Take Varus, but this is weird. I don't know how to play this deck. I guess I can vaguely turn it value, although I've got the conservative, so I don't know how I play that.
I'm really just spitting facts there. This is quick, but I'm also mumbling, so I don't think anyone's supposed to understand what I'm saying, don't worry.
I'm in a very weird position. Like, this is just awkward. Hush.
Yeah, so Hush was not what I wanted to draw. Like, Hush was probably the worst draw I could have possibly had in any of the cards in my deck, even more than, like, Mikhail's. Right, like, I needed something to proc on turn 4, and the rest of this game is going to be me struggling. Okay, this adds, like, 9 seconds? Sure.
Because I'm not, like, targeting anything. I surely, like, this is what I was scared of drawing, like, Hush, right, that sort of card, as opposed to, you know, Sarkis, but I don't know, like, this is not the card I need, this is not the card I need. I guess keeping Pantheon was wrong?
Yeah, so maybe keeping Pantheon was wrong, because it can lead myself to having bricky hands, but I don't know, like, the brickiness of my hand was both self-fulfilling and also, like, RNG. Like, it happened because of both reasons, right? I could have cut the Pantheon, which would have made it be less self-fulfilling, and I could have not predicted Varus. But at the same time, right, like, I drew Expanses, I drew Unforgiving, I already drew, like, a really awkward hand, so I just needed to find, like, some luck. And to me, that luck involved getting a good draw in turn 3. That was where I decided to put all my eggs in that basket, right? Just to, like, speed up the process if that turns out to recur into something. This was my logic. What is the best choice? I'm not entirely sure. I think, like, a better Pantheon Varus player, such as Jansport, might be able to, like, definitely tell me what he would do. But this was my logic, at least. Like, I'm explaining my logic, even if it's not, like, entirely built well, just to explain what's going on in my brain. But at this time, I decided, look, I can pass down the field, and it'll probably be bad for me, or I can play units and it'll be bad for me, but at least it does something. Like, at least my best win condition is probably just trying to beat them before, like, Tybok is scary, and that involves me doing Varus plus, you know, Haratsi over and over and over again. So they do Pirouette, I equip this to beat Flock. They do Flock, this is to proc Drum Solo, as well as put damage on the thing. Next time they do Drum Solo. I'm skipping through this because I literally only have, like, an hour left to go, right? Yeah, I've only got an hour that I'm allowed in this room, and we've got so much more time to go.
Did they play 2 spells? I think they played Pirouette. Here's the Darkened Bow.
But, yep, I cycle the Darkened Bow and Haratsi until I'll level Pantheon. Maybe I should have played Pantheon, and just, like, said deal with it. But if they deal with it, then what, basically? There might have been a better line, like, say, okay, I've got Pantheon, you need to deal with it. But I remember ages and ages ago, back in, like, Aegis Season 2 VOD reviews, like, Eniamore's big thing about a Pantheon versus a Tybok deck is that you want Pantheon leveled, and you want them to, like, 3-for-1 your Pantheons. You don't want to be playing Pantheon on turn 4. Like, even if you've got 3 Pantheons on hand, you can easily win that game. This was before Broadmain, so I don't know how true this is, but you can easily win that game by just, like, replaying Pantheon over and over again and forcing this deck that has to 2-for-1 themselves every time to 3-for-1 or 4-for-1 Pantheon and make it through, right? So that was his logic back then. So keeping that in mind, my thinking was I need Pantheon Flip to do that, like, to try and do that. Maybe I was like, I have to admit that that's just not possible. That's not going to be a winning condition. I've only got 1 Pantheon, and like, the response spells that I've got, like Furious Wielder and Unforgiving Cold, aren't good enough against this sort of deck. So maybe that was wrong, but that's at least like the reason why I'm not playing Pantheon, right? Because my logic prior in experiences like this is to not play Pantheon in these positions.
Oh, like maybe Seraphine.
I play Cluckling.
Okay, well here's Lodestone.
Yep, and then I play Lodestone again. They play Katarina. I am thinking about attacking, but like, what else am I gonna do? I've got nothing going on, like, at all. And this is weird because I can't Pale because of Blade's Edge. There's no reason to Pale. Pale is completely useless. So I have to take this and then also replay Varus so that I'm not like mega dying.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's very. I'm not happy about this position, like, at all. Oh, I don't play Varus. Interesting. Yeah, I was definitely considering playing Varus, and I was like, you know, but I didn't want. I guess I didn't want them to like set up a flock for free, and I could just play Varus the turn after. But I was scared that they were just going to open attack and level up Katarina. But they play Annie, and I'm in a weird position because what I want to do is I want to kill Katarina with Unforgiving Cold, right? That's my main aim, to kill Katarina with Unforgiving Cold. But if they get Tybulk, I only freeze the Cluckling and the Tybulk, right? So I can't kill Katarina with Unforgiving Cold, even if I play Varus. I decided that playing Varus is still the correct choice anyway. But that was my thinking of like the way to kill Katarina. I play Varus, they just decide to attack, they don't proc Tybulk ahead of time, and then this is when I remember that I can't kill Katarina. I forgot that Katarina will recoil before she strikes, which meant I have to pre-commit the Unforgiving Cold. What I was thinking was that I was going to block Katarina, they were going to commit stuff, and then I was going to commit Unforgiving Cold. That was like my Grandmaster plan. And clearly it wouldn't work because Katarina recalls herself on strike. So
I mean, that doesn't work because she's a good deck.
yeah, astute observation Spidz. So, look, I thought they were going to play Heratzi. I thought they were going to play Tybulk here. I didn't think they were going to play Katarina here. If I thought ahead of time that they were going to play Katarina here, I would have played Furious Wielder. Or Unforgiving Cold to stop Katarina from leveling. But in my head, I was like, oh, they're going to play Tybulk here. I just have to pass down. I thought that was so guaranteed that I hadn't considered them playing Katarina. What you'll see in future turns, as I play Lodestone and they play Katarina, I was like, oh, well, then I should have Furious Wielded her, right? Because now they've got this Blade Edge in hand. Now, fun fact, they have 2 Disintegrates in hand, but they actually had no ways to proc Disintegrate. So if I had done that, it would have worked out just fine. Or if I had Unforgiving Cold, it would have also worked out just fine. So had I done that, it actually would have succeeded. But in my head, I thought they're going to play Tybulk. I'm going to pass more by playing Lodestone and tap under the Unforgiving Cold. And then I do this and just say that they don't have Disintegrate. I could have Ghost blocked. That was the right choice. That way if they do, you know, Disintegrate Blade's Edge, Ghost blocking would prevent Katarina from recalling. There was a lot of misplays going on, right? Like, I'm skipping through this because I just don't have time. But there was lots of things I could have done. Yeah, that was like very, very different. And I didn't do any of them. And the reason was that I had an awkward hand that I didn't know what to do with. It was a matchup that I've never done before. I'm not really a Pantheon player. This is the first, like, I played Pantheon Fiora during that one meta, the Nami Lee meta, and I've started playing Pantheon Varus purely because of CDS. So I'm not, like, comfortable with this deck. When I scrim every week with this deck, it's because I'm not used to these matchups at all. I never played it on ladder. So, like, these matchups are super weird for me, and I don't have the comfortability that I need to have regarding these matchups, which is fine, right? Like, I practiced into Karma set. That was the deck I was trying to beat. I never did these practices. So for me to even win one of them, I'm like pretty happy with, right? That's less load for the Karma set stuff. But the main idea was to 2-0 Karma set. There was a lot of things we could have done differently, right? I could have chump blocked. I could have done this beforehand, expecting that Katarina was a pretty good play for them. There were so many things I could have done, but I did none of them. They have that disin, and then, you know, we don't lose on the spot, but we lose on the spot, right? Like, what are we going to do? They have another Katarina. I I can't do anything. I don't have things to do. And that's game, right? And then we move on to this final game that takes 30 freaking minutes. It's a long game. I've got 55 minutes, so let's go over Karma, Set, and Pantheon Virus. We both failed to load in, by the way. But Pantheon Virus and Karma Set. So the mulligan, I keep Pantheon, right?
We'll do something like this, I think.
Yeah, so Lunari Cultist procs herself on 2, and if I draw a weapon in the next 3 draws, including a Forsaken Bakai, that doesn't work. But if I draw a weapon on any of the next 2 draws, I can proc the Lunari Cultist on turn 3, and that was my thinking. I go Lunari Cultist, gem herself, proc it on turn 3, and start progressing this Pantheon level condition quite quickly. And because I was planning on doing that, I kept Pantheon for that reason itself.
I don't know if Pantheon's worth keeping in this matchup either.
But I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing that. But I don't Forsaken Bakai because I want to do the Lodestone thing. I want to do the Cultist thing. So that's why I don't do Forsaken Bakai. There's an interesting logic with predicts where the later you do a predict, the more likely you can use it to find a necessary win condition combo piece. Well, if you do it early, it's more likely to be used for something that slowly procedurally gets your win condition. So back in A Curious Journey, one of the things that Prodigy says in his winner's interview is something like playing the Clockling predict unit, Ancient Prep, is not correct in the Sundisk mirror, and it's not correct in a lot of mirrors, or a lot of times, right? And you might think, well, hold on, I want to get the predict, I want to get the landmark, I want to find my champions, so why not just play Ancient Prep on 1? And the logic is that you don't know what your next 5 draws are going to be, and what you want to predict is, if you say that predict for turn 6, you will know what those 5 draws are because you would have drawn them by then. So if you don't need something specifically for turn 2, 3, 4, what you can do is you can keep that card to find your Azir or your Zerath, because if you draw one of those in your next 5 turns, and you predicted it on turn 1, so now you've got 2 of them, that's not what you need, right? If you get the choice on turn 1 between Azir and Zerath, you have to pick one, as opposed to doing it on turn 6 and you pick the right one, if that makes sense. So it just increases your chances slightly when you're, stuck between 2 decisions. And the same can be said for Forsaken Bakai, right? So if I drew a Wandering Shepherd this turn, Forsaken Bakai doesn't need to be played for a few turns because I've got the Wandering Shepherd. I've got the things I want to be doing for the next few turns. So what Forsaken Bakai can do is on something like turn 6 or turn 7, it can find me specifically what I want, specifically Unending Wave, specifically Expansive Protection, right? Or give me a higher chance of me knowing that's what I want and try and scry for them. Doing it on turn 1 is good for trying to find things like Lunari Cultist and Wandering Shepherd and Haratsi, not just because Haratsi buffs the unit, but because you want to be playing those on 2 and on 3. But if you end up drawing those on 2 and 3, then you don't need to. And because I've got a turn 2 drop, I don't need to do the thing, or a turn 3 drop or whatever. I don't need to do it early because I've found what I need. It's like a general predict principle, and when you're playing decks like Echo Zillion, it doesn't matter because all of your cards are predict, so all of them can be played with this sort of archetype. But when you've only got 1 or 2 predicts in your deck, such as Sundisk with Ancient Prep, or such as Forsaken Bakai in a lot of these Varus decks, Kane decks, these sorts of things, unless you need that 2-1 to be aggressive, such as you often do need in decks like Kane, Aatrox and Kane Vayne often wanted a 3-2 to attack, or be something to equip with a weapon. So if I had Lodestone in hand, I would have played the unit. But because I don't have Lodestone in hand, because I've got a turn 2 play, and because I want to see what I draw over the next 2 turns, just in case it ends up being played on turn 3, I don't play the Forsaken Bakai. There's obviously the reason of gemming the unit, but it's not unlikely to imagine that I'm going to skip a Faded proc on 3. Because with hands like these, unless I want to, Guiding Touch my own unit, there's a chance I'm going to skip it on turn 3. So skipping it on turn 2 or turn 3 is the same sentence when it comes to turn 7 or turn 8 Pantheons, right? It's the same sentence, it'll be on turn 7 if I'm skipping them on one of the turns. So I don't need to Forsaken Bakai. This is general predict logic that I was going through, combined with the fact that I wanted a 2-3 on 2 to smack the health fit a little bit more. I hope that's useful.
Ooh, we did back. I think I get something like a Dark and Lodestone. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted.
And that's the perfect predict. That's exactly what I wanted. It creates a 3-2, and I get to play Wounded White Flame. And I get to do this while holding up Pale Cascade.
They could get excited when Wounded White Flame. They could also tag out Wounded White Flame, but I doubt it. Oh, Mixer. Okay.
They play Mixer, we do this thing. I decide not to attack here. I spent a long time thinking about whether to attack, and I decide not to. I want to explain what the logic was. So if I attack, I can buff 2 things. I can buff the 2-3 into a 3-4, which just gets blocked by Mixo, and then the 3-2 gets blocked by the 3-3. Or, and what I was most scared of was that they would block the Pit Professional into the Wounded Wide Flame, and then just Mystic or High Note it, And then all of a sudden, like, one of my main pieces of things that they need to deal with at some point is, like, nullified, right? And them nullifying that early, look, it's not awful for me, but it's not great for me. I could attack with just Wounded White Flame, and if they've got the high note, all of a sudden my attack isn't that good. And if I attack with 2 units, it's fine. Like, I could have attacked with Wounded White Flame plus Lunary Cultist, and or even Wounded White Flame plus the 3/4, or the, I think that would eventually become a 3/4. But all of the permutations of attacks get really sad into Mystic Shot. I just thought that was like a really awkward position to be in. And even if I like attack with everything and they've got Mystic Shot, I'm pushing like 3 damage, which is fine. My board after that's a little awkward where I'm buffing up just 1 unit or 2 units, and I can do like Heratzi stuff, and that's fine. And I'd probably get the Pantheon going. But what I was thinking was I can actually make this Wounded White Flame have about 8 strength and like, 10 health or something. Something like along those lines, and in that position, they need to recall Wounded White Flame, or they need to punch a bunch more resources into it, including something like a Hex Splitterator. That was my thinking for why I didn't attack. Now, attacking could be good. Like, I don't think attacking is awful, and, getting stuff like High Note out isn't the worst, but High Note also doesn't really do anything into me. High Note's best purpose is to pop Spell Shield, and look, they will find other ways of popping Spell Shield. They've got a bunch of High Notes, they've got a bunch of Mystics, they've got a bunch of Get Excited. Like, popping Spell Shield isn't really their problem. It's the concussives and the tag outs that I really want to be taxing, as well as, like, slightly Hex Splitterator, but not really. And so I didn't really want to attack with the Dragon just because I didn't want to be running into Mystic. Now, I think Aikado thought this was, like, a really weird play, and maybe it was, and maybe others will disagree. I think this is a play that's definitely contentious. I can see both worlds being, like, super, super arguable, but my logic for not attacking with Wounded White Flame is that I didn't want to be running into High Note. Because I don't have a Mentis Choice, and I think they take that bet. I think they take the bet of doing Mystic Shot, because if I'm a Mentis Choice, which is a pretty key part of, like, my reaction package, on a turn where I've already procced Faded, that's good for them. That, like, it's not amazing for them, but it's better than them not doing that, right? Which means they will do it, which means it's good for them, right? That's what I mean. It's not good for them in the sense of they're winning. It's good for them in the sense that it's better for them to do it than for not them to do it, and I don't want them to be in positions where they're happy to do things. I want them to always be sad every single time. So that's why I didn't attack. But attacking could be justified. Maybe pushing damage is nice. Maybe forcing them to have cards is nice.
I think I'm supposed to pass, but maybe I'm supposed to attack.
That sort of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, so I play this. One reason is that it procs Faded. One reason is that Furious Wielder in the late game gets hit by Deny, and so while they can deny here, it costs them their coins. And pressuring their coins isn't too important, but it is something nice to do if you can pressure them to use their coins. And, like, I get to proc Faded, and they also aren't doing anything with their Vi. Like, they can't kill the Wounded White Flame with the Vi anymore, which means I can attack with the Wounded White Flame. Either it trades into Vi. When I say, like, I want this to trade into Hex Split or something, or Tag Out, like, Vi is also very similar. It's basically the same card in the sense that, like, these are their big pieces of removal that are going to be trading into something. And Wounded White Flame being my, like, 13th champion. 3 Pantheons, 6 because Varus, 9 because Saga Seeker, 13 because of Heratzi, 12 because of Heratzi, being my 13th champion, right? Like, trading into all of their stuff is important, right? I've got 13 champions, they've got, 3 Vi's and, like, 2 Hex Splits, and the rest are, like, Tag Outs and stuff, which are only temporary kills of champions. And, like, sometimes they can multiple Get Excited, like Heratzis and stuff, and Varuses and stuff. But the point is that, like, I'm trying to pressure them by having more of these important must-deal-with units, and they don't have set to deal with those, right? But anyway, I try and tax their Deny. Taxing their Deny is not what I meant. I'm going to tax their coins. If they've got Deny, they've got Deny. This is their only Deny target. So if they've got Deny, this is, like, the only way they can use that card, so they may as well, and they get to keep the Vi, which is good for them. But I get to tax the coins, which means on the next turn they're completely out of mana, and we can sort of try and start doing cute things when they're out of mana and we're pressuring them. So that's why I did Furious Wielder here.
Deny it? Okay. They will kill Lunary Cultist.
Okay.
We will rebuild something. Sure. I mean, Wounded White Flame is dead now. That's why I could play something like Pantheon.
I'm not sure what I do here. I think I open, but I don't remember what I'm doing here. Do I open plus gem?
What is the punishment for Pantheon? I don't think there is that much of one. Besides that they can pull Pantheon next turn, I guess. Is the point.
Okay, I decided to open. So I could play Pantheon here, but like Pantheon's barrier is like a little important for trying to play around Vi. So I did want Pantheon to have barrier, and while Pantheon wouldn't die here, right? Like they can't really Mystic Get Excited Pantheon. Pantheon technically doesn't actually survive that, but they don't really know that, right? Like if I've got Pale Cascade, they can't justify killing Pantheon here with like Mystic Get Excited. So I could have played Pantheon and then attack with them, but if I attack with Pantheon, then I'm running into the same stuff where Mystic just kills Pantheon all of a sudden because they block with Pit Professional or Mixo or even Vi, and then Mystic or High Note, and then Pantheon's dead, and I don't want Pantheon to die to those positions. I want Pantheon to be like a something X, like an X5 or whatever, and like be aggressive. So I didn't want to play Pantheon here, so I just decided to open. I don't know if opening's fully correct, but I thought trading into Vi is a good thing that my Wounded White Flame can do. I should have pre-committed the gem, I think, but that's my bad.
Okay. I think I'll accept this.
They do this block, which is fine. I get to push 5 damage, which is pretty good for me. I play the gem, but I should have pre-committed it, I think. I think like just pushing the extra damage in, either forcing Vi to block or forcing the Mixo to block is like pretty good for me. So I think I should have just pre-committed gem. I think that's very lazy for me not to. And then I play Forsaken Bouquet. I don't take Saga Seeker, do I? Okay, so I could have taken Saga Seeker here. I don't have any ways to proc Saga Seeker, which is why I didn't. Like I'd have to do the Urla, the Unending Wave to proc Saga Seeker, or I could like, you know, Guiding Touch my Saga Seeker, which is fine, but it's not great, right? I would have rather played Horatsi or something on Saga Seeker. So I guess I take Expansive Protection to play around stuff like Hex Split, so I think that's fine, but I am needing to find things to proc Faded besides this Guiding Touch, because besides Guiding Touch I don't really have a way to proc Faded. I've also got Pantheon Shield Vault, but that's like a little bit later in the game where that sort of play is more desirable. We've got 2 Pit Profesh.
Next turn is just Pantheon into hopefully getting something to happen.
They play Serene. So I decided to play Pantheon. Now they can do stuff like Get Excited Pantheon, but I didn't expect them to do that and like sacrifice their Vi. And if they do that, I've got a second Pantheon. And as I said, Pantheon, in the slides, like Pantheon does struggle to be played twice very often. So I'd be fine playing Pantheon to get second Pantheon. Like that's good for me. Trading Pantheon into their Vi. They've got 6 pieces of removal, 5 pieces of removal. I've got 15 champions. Like that's good for me. This is a good trade if that happens. But they end up pulling Wounded White Flame, I think. Maybe they just pull Broccoli. They might just pull Forsaken Bouquet. I don't entirely remember. I've not edited the thing yet. So, non-losser?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, they pass. Right, okay. So then I proc... So, I don't know why I proc Faded here. I actually should have passed back. I think I should have just, like, said, oh, okay. But I was so surprised by them passing. I was like, oh, I know what to do. I should always proc Pantheon every turn. But I should have really just every time taken that pass. I didn't need to proc Pantheon there. I don't, like, need the mana that much. So if I just open Guiding Touch next turn, it means that they can never kill anything with a Vi. And I've got Pantheon flipped and ready to do things. So I think playing Guiding Touch there was always wrong. I'm pretty sure.
I guess I could have passed, but I think this is good.
Yeah, I shouldn't have let this trade be possible from
Could
them.
also play Pantheon with barrier on the next turn, but that's not necessary.
So here I do the Unending Wave to try and find anything, and these are what I find, which is a little awkward.
I could shield wall, but I don't think that's necessarily the best thing.
So I can Shield Vault, but I don't see the point in Shield Vaulting. I get to add +1/+1, but I was thinking that I kind of want them to, like, if they play Hex Split, I'm not going to, like, ask questions. I'm just going to replay Pantheon and feel pretty fine about it, especially if I can find something like an elusive. So because I didn't want to ask questions, like, I felt pretty okay with that, and that's why I didn't play Shield Vault. But I could have, right? Like, it's not impossible. I can stun the lifesteal unit, although that lifesteal unit will always trade for 3 health at some point in the game, right? That's just the nature of that lifesteal unit in this matchup. And I could have stunned Vi to keep Wounded White Flame out of combat, but I've got this weird issue where I want Vi to die, right? I want Vi to be gone so that they can't threaten Vi stuff anymore. And I also want Horatsi a little. So I'm in this weird position where, like, the best thing the Wounded White Flame can do is eventually trade into Vi. And so I didn't really want to stun Vi either, so I thought my best plan is to just open attack and try and trade into things. And if I can find use out of this Pantheon, great, but I'm not going to, like, force it by doing it in a position that doesn't let me accomplish some of my other goals, such as letting Wounded White Flame die, accessing Horatsi, or, you know, letting Vi die, or that sort of stuff, right? That was my logic, but it's close. I think there are worlds where you can play Pantheon Shieldbot here. I pull this to push the most damage, right? Be like making sure I'm still threatening the Nexus and stuff. And I think this is the first major misplay. So like other things like contentious misplays, this is just the first like objective. I think it's always a misplay. So I could let this through, get Haratsi. Haratsi's not bad for me. Haratsi's really, really good for me. I can just let this through and go get Haratsi. But I was thinking, I kind of want them to put like a little bit more resources into this and like coerce them into trading into my Wounded White Flame. So I thought, let's buff Fated. Let's, you know, get the Fated proc just for like second Pantheon. If Pantheon ends up somehow dying or they recall Pantheon, then I get to play more Pantheons, right? Get more keywords like Impact or Elusive, which are genuinely important keywords, or Quick Attack or Challenger. Like, there are keywords that are important to get on Pantheon. Augment and, like, because if it gets recalled, I want more access to Augment and more access to Faded, to Impact and more access to Challenger, right? And Elusive, right? These are the important keywords to access. And so, like, we should be proccing Faded every turn if it's not out of our way. But I decided to play Momentous instead of Thingo because I wanted them to get more than a coin. That's wrong. I think I should just like play the fleeting card because it's a fleeting card. I should have done Expanses first, and then if I really wanted to play the other card. So this was just like always wrong. Now they obviously know that I also am stuck between like wanting Haratsi and wanting a big unit. So I'm in like a bit of a weird position, but they end up deciding to not let me get Haratsi and just let this trade go through. But I've killed one of their champions, which is Vi, and that's like pretty important. And when I mean champions, like I'm not including Karma here. What I mean is like ways of interacting with my champions. One of their champion dealers, I should say.
Yeah.
They play Sky Singer. And this is where I'm like, oh, well, what am I doing now? I guess I'll just proc my Fated. And I importantly didn't want more Pantheons in my deck, so I don't play the Pantheon spell, I don't think.
Yeah. I should have just played this.
Yep, so I should have just played that. And I could have even pre-committed it on the Pantheon to get one extra stat, right? But I actively decide not to play Pantheon because I don't want to draw my Pantheons. I've got another Pantheon, and again, they don't have ways of killing Pantheon outside of like Vi and like, you know, Karma Hexsplit, but even then Karma Hexsplit does lose to a Spell Shield, right? So I didn't want more Pantheons. Now, you might argue against this. You might think you might want Pantheon. But what I really wanted was like, you know, things like Varus and Haratsi more. Like those are more important cards for me. That's why I decided not to play Pantheon Shield Vault. I think this is one of the things that I'm more willing to stand by, despite it being like a contentious decision. Like this is one that isn't, I'm not going to say is like everyone's going to agree with it, but I think this is one of the ones that I'm more likely to like be a bit more confident in. Having done this matchup, I really think that this is the way that this should have gone because they don't have those sets, right? Like because it's fire, this makes more sense to me.
If they don't have Karma, they will. But we'll do Varus and stuff. Oh my god, do they not have Karma? Holy shit.
Yeah, I was so shocked that they didn't have Karma here. Like, it changes a lot, right? So I think I can still beat post-Karma. They've done really well to stem my aggression, like, pre-Karma, but post-Karma, I think I can still beat them. A lot of the stuff that I want to do against post-Karma is fine, and I don't have the Haratsi, so I don't need to be worried about Karma popping Spell Shield and then stunning Haratsi. The Haratsi stuff's good, you know, with Karma, but it's much better when they don't have Karma. But they don't have Karma, which means, like, a lot of the stuff that I can do is so much more powerful, especially with double Expanses in hand. Like, I'm feeling a lot prettier in my position because they don't have Karma. And so I assume Clockling found Karma at this point, so I knew I was going to open attack on the next turn. Just because I have to assume that they've got Karma from Haratsi. Or Karma from Clockling. But you've seen the montage. You know they don't have Karma. You know they don't have Karma until turn 14. And from memory, they search for Karma like 26 times or something because of all the predicts from the Mulligan, from, you know, the draws, right? But they don't have Karma here, which is good for me. Like, it sucks because I want to prove to you that Karma isn't... I can still beat Karma, but these are just words and you're never going to see the proof. But I knew I was opening here, right? This attack with the Wounded White Flame is really interesting. So what I was thinking was that there are worlds in which I pressure them and I don't want them to lifesteal. And I think the worlds where I pressure them are more likely than the worlds... Like, the worlds that I pressure them over the lifesteal unit with the Varus are more likely than the worlds where I need the +1/+1 on the Varus. And that's why I decided to do it this way. But It's weird. I could have done the Varus buff, and maybe it was better. Or I could have even done the Pantheon buff. Like, both of them are pretty decent, but this was why I did this. Like, that's at least my logic for it. I think a lot of the worlds that I wanted to present, like, a deathly scenario involved worlds where Pantheon wasn't going to, or Varus was going to need that 1/1 buff from Heratzi there. I knew they were going to block like this. I knew I was going to end up playing Varus spell. I'm very happy drawing multiple Varuses. That's something I'm very happy to do. Because Varus spell is a lot better than Pantheon spell. Like, Varus spell is, like, really good, right? Because it buffs your things multiple times. You know, I'm only drawing 1 card a turn, so having 12 mana to spend on something is, like, very redeemable. That was my logic for that, at least. Yep, so I pre-commit this twice, I think. I mean, because we have Augment. Like, this is what I meant by Augment being one of the better keywords in this matchup, because Augment is one of the few ways to add strength. So I was really happy to get Augment here, right? Because Augment now makes this +5 instead of +4. Right? Double from Varus, 1 from Faded, and 1 from Augment, right?
Then they tag out. Yeah. Expanses.
I'm not sure about this Expanses. It's pretty likely that they've got High Note and something. So, like, all this Expanses does is say play High Note. It doesn't say play, you know, tag out. So the only thing this Expanses is killing is Mystic or High Note, which is fine, I guess. This Expanses is weird. I don't know if it's correct. I'm not confident in this Expanses protection. But sure, I do it anyway. And it's Get Excited, which means they have to discard something, which is nice for me. But I'm not... Expanses Protection's an interesting card that has a lot of, like, specific types of use that it can do, and I'm just not sure that this type of use was the best type of use Expanses can go for. But, you know, I have 2 Expanses, so I'm more willing to be, like, a little bit less, like, you know, Expanses, you must do this, like, a bit less military about Expanses, because I've just got the 2, but obviously that's also my last Expanses, because we discarded 1 earlier, or we played 1 because it was going to be fleeting earlier, right? How much time do I have? 30 minutes. Okay.
Yep,
I think we'll do this.
But now they're going to have Karma and stuff. They've not drawn Karma. Okay.
Yeah, they've still not drawn Karma, which is surprising to me, but I assume they're going to have Karma very, very soon. I take Fisherwhack over the thing that gives me more health, because Fisherwhack plus Heratzi is beautiful, right? I got really lucky with getting Fisherwhack here. And the only stuff that's, like, comparable to Fisherwhack is, like, Overwhelm and, like, I don't know, Quick Attack, sort of, kind of, vaguely. All Quick Attack does is, like, deprioritize Mystic, right? So if I get Quick Attack, they won't be able to kill Heratzi with, like, Mystic, Mixo, Mystic. So that's why, like, Quick Attack is sort of good, but what you really want is you want, like, evasive keywords. You want the Overwhelm for Heratzi, and you want, like, sort of, kind of, the Fearsome, just to force it to be, like, a Mixo block as opposed to a Cluckling block, or, like, a Fallen Feline block. But Fisherwhack was amazing, even if this means they can kill Wounded White Flame with a Get Excited, right? Like, I'd much rather this, because then I have Heratzi plus Heratzi plus Fisherwhack, and that's phenomenal. And at this point, I decide I want Heratzi, so I let this die. I think about it for a while. I definitely think about doing the protection spell, but I decide that Heratzi is more important to me. I do want the Heratzi in my life.
I think I'm supposed to.
Oh, no, sorry. I don't want... No, sorry. Ignore all that. It's not that I want Heratzi. It's that I think Expanses is more valuable later on, so I decide not to do it. It's simple as that, basically. And, like, getting the Overwhelm weapon on Heratzi is important to make Heratzi more of a threat, so accessing the weapon is nice, right? I want that weapon. I want both of them now. Like, a weapon in the hand is worth 1 on the Wounded White Flame, right? 2 weapons in the hand is worth 1 on the Wounded White Flame, and the other one also in the hand. Famous idiom.
This poor guy. Holy shit.
Yeah, this poor guy.
Expecting it now?
Expecting it now, I say. And then it's still not here. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Which is, you know, lucky. Right?
I think I have to be bargain with Lodestone Fisherwhack. I think that's a more consistent thing to be doing.
Yeah, so the most consistent thing now is just to play Lodestone plus the weapon, right? So I'm thinking about Pantheon or Lodestone plus weapon, and I decide to do Lodestone plus weapon. They play Cat, they play Vi.
I get to say.
They play 3 coins, and then they do Professional, and there's a bit of a weird thing that happens here. Well, I'll let it happen when it goes. So they decide to attack to try and kill this. So they play the coin, right, and then play Pit Professional. The whole reason I'm playing coin plus Pit Professional is to kill Haratsi. I'm skipping through this because I just don't have time. They play the Pit Professional plus the Haratsi to plus the coins to try and kill Vi. They have the visual bug where it looks like they've got 3 coins, which will be important in a second. And they try to kill Haratsi, but we got really lucky and top decked a momentous choice here and was able to protect Haratsi, which was just like, I got lucky in this game. Now, getting lucky isn't the only reason why I won. I think I won this game because I played some of the turns. I played my turns properly and I knew the matchup. And it's luck, but it's also like this is how the matchup was trying to go in a sense. But sure, it's tough. It's so tough when you win because you get lucky, but, you know, the logic was still there, right? Because, like, you know, you can't be too proud of the win because, you know, you got lucky. But also, like, absent of luck, I still felt like I was doing good stuff. Please give me the credit I deserve. It's like the emotion you want to provide, right? So anyway, they do this full attack, which I think is really good by them. Doing a full attack here was super, super clever. And it definitely puts me in a weird position where I don't want to lose to Karma plus Burn. Like, I don't want to lose to Karma plus Burn. And their win condition is supposed to be Burn. So I don't want to lose to Karma plus Burn. So I decide to block like this. Now, there are issues with blocking like this. Blocking with the guy, the weapon shepherd, the wandering shepherd, means that you can't open attack with Haratsi and buff something, right? Like, because you want to buff something and give it overwhelm and make it a threat. And I wanted to make that wandering shepherd. And I can't do that if wandering shepherd is dead. And also, Varus's weapon has got +2/+2. And it'll have +8 plus 2, +8 plus 0, 2 plus 2. It's currently got +4 plus 0. It will have +8 plus 0 when I'm playing Momentous Choice. And it's going to reset when it kills the Mixo. So this block is one of the few ones that Jansport was like, don't do this block, when we talked about the game after the game. This is the only thing he mentioned as like a sort of misplay. And I think it's really close. I really did not want to die to Karma plus Burn, and I thought Karma plus Burn has to be in their range, right? Like, they has to have Karma at some point in their next draw. So I didn't want to die to it, and I thought I can let the game go on for a little bit longer, even if they've got the Karma. I don't want to die to Burn. I'd rather let Varus not be lethal aggressing. And I thought I'd rather play Pantheon and force them to do Karma, and because they can't do Karma plus stun in the same action, right? Like, Haratsi will still be able to attack, which means Haratsi can still apply the spell shield to someone, right? Or they're first committing a pop on the spell shield, which means I'm able to do other things with my turn, right? Like, they don't have the Karma on the field, so I'm a lot safer. That was my logic regarding blocking. I didn't want to die to Burn. I thought that I was going to be developing anyway, because even if they got Karma, like, developing is okay for me. And I felt like I could stall out the game a little bit longer. If I wanted to kill them on, like, the next 2 turns, there's definitely, like, a logic to open attacking, having a 9/7, 2 9/7 attackers and like a procced up Varus. But if they've got 2 stuns, they can not die there, and then they just play, like, Karma and then, you know, draw into, like, 2 burn spells, and I've lost the game all of a sudden. I didn't want to be in that position at all. That was what I wanted to avoid. Now, obviously, they can draw 3 draw spells, and then I'm still dead, but 3 burn spells or Mystic Get Excited, and I'd still be losing, but at least I wouldn't be just losing to, like, Mystic. That was my thinking. And that's why I decided to block. It's something I think about a lot, but I decided to block in the end.
Wait.
And I thought they had mana. Because the 3 mana there, I knew it was a bug. But because they played a spell, I was like, holy shit, did they actually have the 3 mana? That's a 0 mana tag out that they're playing because of all the Serene Sky Singers, and then the Clockling is a self-targeting one, and they didn't decide to do the self-targeting. I think they wanted to, like, get the lifesteal unit or something. But yeah, they don't have mana. But I genuinely thought that. I just assumed the bug was wrong and they actually did have mana. It was a very weird position.
Yeah.
Then I play Pantheon. And Pantheon's been targeted 9 times, which I think is, like, important. I want those keywords. I want Impact. I want Elusive. I want Augment. I want these things, right? Challenger.
Do they have Karma?
And I get them, right? Because I faded as many times as I had. And I got Lifesteal. Importantly, I've got Lifesteal, which means that I'm not dying to burn lethals anymore. So you could argue that, like, the chance of getting Lifesteal is really, really high, so I shouldn't worry about burn, so I shouldn't have done the Varus block. I think that's a decent argument, actually. That the chance of Lifesteal is so, so high, and I knew I was going to be playing Pantheon. So maybe I shouldn't have blocked with Varus to do that. I think that's, like, a really good argument, actually. So, yeah, I think that's actually, like, a really, really good argument. Again, I'd be losing to Karma plus Mystic if I did that, as opposed to just Karma plus Get Excited, right? The only way I lose right now is Karma plus Get Excited and Mystic, in terms of, like, burn lethals, or double Get Excited or triple Mystic, but... And I wanted to give them the necessary need to have the necessary need. I wanted them to need to have Get Excited, which they played 2 of, I think so far. Maybe just 1. They think a lot. They're very upset about their lack of karmas. They tag out the Haratsi in the end, but that's fine. Like that's 2 resources gone. The whole point, again, with this deck, I'm outvaluing them. That's the entire point of this deck. I can push lethal here by cycling weapons, and so I do. I play Haratsi, I play Wandering Shepherd, I attack, I force them to play something else. They, I think, draw like a bunch of cards. Alright, they do tag out, and now they're forced to draw into cards, and again, I'm outvaluing them. They now no longer can do pack your bags or place your bets plus karma. So they play place your bets, they get their 0 mana hex split, or whatever it is.
Oh, it could be the cat card.
I thought it might have been the cat card or Mystic Shot. I forgot that Hex Splitterator will cost 2 mana, because I forgot they played this Sky Singers, but it doesn't matter, right? Like, mana is meaningless at this point in life. But they kill Varus, which is fine. I'm healed to full, so now I don't need to worry about karma burn anymore. And even if they draw karma here, I will win, right? Like I'm not in a wary position. I'm feeling very, very comfy. They play Vi. I think I pass. Maybe I play Haratsi. Oh yeah, no, I quit Pantheon to make Aikado play more cards to kill Pantheon, right? I want them to feel as if their best play right now is to play coin plus something to kill Pantheon, because I've got second Pantheon, right? But again, like I don't often play second Pantheon, but I can force them to sort of feel the need to, and then I can do second Haratsi. And they don't know I've got second Haratsi in here, I don't think. They should have no clue. In fact, they should be seeing this and thinking like, hell yeah, they're not playing Haratsi, let's go. But they don't know. You know that meme format where there's a person at a party and they're like, they don't know X. Aikado doesn't know that I've got Haratsi in hand. They're thinking a lot. They play coin plus karma, I think, and they play coin specifically, again, remember that old coin professional play to kill Haratsi? They're doing this just so they can kill Pantheon, right? Which feels great for me because guess what? I've got Haratsi and I've got Pantheon. I'm feeling very, very happy. I decided to play Unending Wave to try and find a stun spell or a momentous choice or something. I probably could have passed, but I think they would have passed back, and then passing back is like a little scary for me, just in case they get a way to stun Haratsi that I'd be developing at open speed, and then also have a way of dealing with Pantheon. That's why I didn't want to do that. I wanted to draw something like a Varus and put them in a weird position, but I ended up not drawing that in the end. I played Power Cascade to because I think they were going to, if I passed, they were going to pass back, so I didn't want to lose that draw. And I'm right, they pass back.
But we can still win our position, especially if they've got some consistent Hush.
And Hush is just like a beautiful, beautiful draw. That Hush is very, very lucky, and so, you know, I don't think they can beat me despite the Hush. I do Hush Haratsi because now Haratsi's like so safe, right? This is the thing. Haratsi is super safe into their deck if they don't have Karma on field. And right now they don't have Karma on field. They've got this 5/5 that doesn't have any text.
Well,
So they do have Concussive, which meant they could have stunned Haratsi doubly. That wouldn't have actually saved them. Their last card in hand is Deny and Scrapdash Assembly. Scrapdash Assembly from Karma's start of round effect. And the other card is Deny. So, you know, Pantheon's big enough such that Hush didn't matter, right? So drawing Hush here is lucky in as much as like it's very like, wow, Spidz, you really have the luck of the draw. You're drawing all the cards that you need. Like, good job, right? It's very tilting for me to have Hush, but it doesn't change anything, right? Like, because they would be stunning the Pantheon and then the Haratsi would be lethal anyway, right? Or they'd be stunning the Haratsi doubly and then Pantheon would be lethal anyway. So either way, I've got lethal. Then we do this, and then I'll just let the rest of this play out for itself. And I wanted to put this joke in. I want to make sure that this joke stays in the video.
Yeah.
I know, I felt really bad. I couldn't emote them because any emote would be seen as BM. So I wanted to send like a Leona emote because I thought this like cycle was really, really funny. But I couldn't do it because it'd be rude. It would look like BM, I think. I thought they could have still had, yeah. And then you see me writing some jokes. But I didn't want to send any of them because I didn't want to seem like BMing. But there were lots of like rotation jokes that I wanted to make. And we win. So to like go over this game, right? Like they don't have karma, right? Like good job, Spidz. You beat a karma deck that didn't have karma. Aren't you so proud? But I do think like the general play pattern, thoughts, and strategies were interesting, and there were some misplays, right? So I think there's some interesting stuff regarding the predict, right? Like I ended up doing it on turn 3, but like talking about predict in general, I think is interesting. This play taxing mana, I think is interesting. Their use of Vi is interesting. This use of guiding touch to Pantheon is like unnecessary, but talking about Pantheon and the way to buff things, I think is interesting. Forcing the resources out of them, and like if you look at their hand as time goes on, like karma will generate stuff, but even still, like when karma generates stuff, maybe a half, a third are useful, and the rest is stuff like dragon attack and Dawn and Dusk. Dawn and Dusk isn't bad for their deck. Random nonsense that exists in these regions. I don't know, like there's nonsense. Just trust me, there's nonsense. Shadow Flare, that sort of stuff. And I don't know. I think this is a really interesting game, and I think there's a lot more that you can probably analyze from their perspective. But simultaneously, they just didn't have the karma, so it's not that interesting. It's weird. I think this is a weird game, and I really wish they did have karma earlier, so I could show you that I think this matchup is great, even if they've got the karma. Like obviously, if they have karma on their turn 10 or whatever, I can drag this. Like they would be able to have karma plus place your bets, right? And they'd be doing a bunch of stuff with karma place your bets, and they'd be drawing their deck, but they've only got 6 ways of killing stuff in their deck, or they've got 3 stuns, 3 recalls, and 2 like hex splits. Those are the only ways of killing stuff. So everything else they need to find that's lethal is like regenerative or burn, right? So they need to like generate it off karma, or they need to like find burn or find second Vi to put on the clockling, and these things are deal withable. Like they can be acquiesced. I think the unending waves were really weird. I'm not too sure about the unending waves. I think they could have been a little bit better. They were both done probably like one action before I needed to do them, I think is generally speaking the truth about these unending waves, but that's my bad, right? Like I think I could have waited an action for both of those unending waves. Yeah, and that's everything. I hope you enjoy, and I think after this I've got like the numbers for the chances of stuff occurring. But I managed to do this in time. I've only got 20 minutes to go, but we were recording for an hour and I only had 80 minutes, so I've done this just in time. Thank you all for listening and enjoy the math. All right, I'm recording this right after the slides intro. Okay, so hopefully now you've seen that I won. And I won 2-1. And I want to explain the maths regarding my chances of getting to playoffs. So the first column in this Google sheet shows the current standings, right? So I'm 5-2, Mefrigi's 5-2, Capital's 5-2, Aikado's 4-3, Tempo's Puffball's 4-3, Tempo's 3-4, Absol's 2-5, and Elzon unfortunately is 0-7. Right? Next to it is the points, right? So I've got 14 points, Mafra Capital 13, Aikado 14, Puffball 11, etc. If you forget how this system works, the first number, like the 5-2, is how many like best of 3 wins you have, and the 14, 13s, blah, 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 is how many points you have. So you get 3 points for doing a 2-0, you get 2 points for doing a 2-1, you get 1 point for doing a 1-2, and you get 0 points for being 0-2, right? So you get more points for doing 2-0s, and that's how like Aikado, despite having less game wins, has 1 more point, because Aikado 2-0'd most of the weeks that he won, and 1-2'd in most of the weeks that he lost, right? Just like I did. But he lost 1 more week, right? Then Mafriju, Capitao, and I. So this week, the final week, I fight Circuit again, Mafriju fights Aikado again, and Puffball fights Elzon again. Obviously, if I'm ever not to make playoffs, it means Circuit has to 2-0 me, right? And since Elzon is not in contention, the best chance for me not to make playoffs is if Puffball 2-0s me, right? So you can see the results of both of those scenarios, both occurring but in R1 and R2. So R2 is where both of those have occurred, and R1 is just where the Capital Circuit one has occurred. And you can see in R2, I'm 1 point above Mafriju, but they've obviously got the game to play, and I'm tied with Aikado, but they obviously need to get the game win, right? So if Mafriju beats Aikado, whether it's 2-1 or 2-0, I'm 4th, right? Because I've got more game wins than Aikado. If Aikado wins 2-0, I'm 4th because I've got more points than Mafriju. But if Aikado wins 2-1, I'm tied 4th with Mafriju. And that is the only way I don't make it into the tournament. If I'm 4th, I think we do a tiebreaker set and we just do another best of 3, just Mafriju and I. But this, just keeping in mind, if I even go 1-2 against Aikado Capital, if I go even just like get 1 win against Capital, I have more points than Mafriju, right? Even in the scenario where she goes 1-2. And if Puffball doesn't go 2-0, I will have more points than Puffball, right? Because if Puffball goes, 2-1, then she only gets 2 points, which means I'll have 14 points and she'll have 13 points. So basically, there are 3 games that can occur, and each have 4 possible permutations. And of those 4 possible permutations, each of those games has to go one way in particular in order for me not to make it. So basically, it's 1 in 4 squared, 1 in 4 cubed, which is 1 in 64. So there's a 1 in 64 chance I don't make it. In every other world, I am guaranteedly in. And in the 1 in 64 that I don't make it, it's just an extra best of 3. I've been quite lucky to do so well. And I think that's partly due to like how much I'm putting in effort for this. Other people are not screaming for like multiple hours on every single deck with different lineups every single time. Like I am putting the most work into this because I really enjoy this format. I think this format's really, really enjoyable. And it's the most fun I've had in Legends of Runeterra for a long, long time. And I'm very thankful for the experience. Yeah, I just wanted to like explain this. So there's a good chance I'm in. I might take next week a little bit more durability, especially since our game is actually the last game of the week. This order that I put that there is actually like not correct. Our game occurs a day after all the other games. So if any of these don't happen, I could see myself bringing just like random decks, just like, you know, Varus Gwen or something, but like actual Varus Gwen. Like, you know, I'm going to buff up my Varus with Hollowed, like that sort of Varus Gwen. So I think that'll be interesting, but I think there's a good chance I'm in. So yeah, that's it. Bye.